Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, a Sunday morning politics and talk show for our Hoosier state without the MAGA BS. My name's Scott Aaron Rogers, broadcasting live from Bloomington this morning. I've got a great panel here with me today. Let's bring everybody in. All right, let us start with Abdul Hakim Shabazz coming to us from Indianapolis. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, my friend. How's it going?
I'm doing great, thank you. Introduce yourself, tell the people where they can find you. Since you're going to be dropping knowledge on them, they're going to want to be following you by the time this one's over.
Well, I don't know if I call it knowledge, but we'll be dropping something. I'll tell you that much. My name's Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Been in Indianapolis for 20 years, but from Illinois originally. Grew up in Chicago, worked in Bloomington, Springfield, lived in the Quad Cities, went to law school in St. Louis University. Got my graduate degree from the University of Illinois, went to undergrad at NIU. So my life is basically I-55 and I-39, north and all points north and south. We're in Indianapolis, covered local government politics, been doing so for the past 20 years. I covered Mitch Daniels, Eric Holcomb, Mike Pence, Mike Braun. I've seen basically everything in the state 2 or 3 different times. And I got an interesting perspective. My personal politics are more of I would consider a moderate conservative. Leave my money alone, but also I don't want people messing around with my wife's private parts. So that's just kind of my rule. Leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Do whatever you want, as long as you don't ask me to pay for it, we're all good. But I am a very establishment kind of guy, because I'm a firm believer the establishment will be here even after all the rabble rousers are gone, or better yet, after the rabble rousers have been co-opted by the establishment. So looking forward to a good conversation today.
Hey, thanks for being here. Hey, what's that website really quick so the people can follow you?
IndyPolitics.org is my main website.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's welcome our next panelist. Good morning, Ross Thomas. How are you today?
Oh, doing well, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Why don't you introduce yourself to the good people out there?
I'm Ross Thomas. I'm the chairman of the Bartholomew County Democratic Party in Columbus, Indiana. Have been chair down here for about 4 years. Have lived in Columbus for about 20 years. I'm a lifelong Hoosier. Grew up in a farm down in Jennings County. Went to college at Tulane University in New Orleans. Came back here, went to law school 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago now, at what we called IU Indianapolis back then, now called McKinney School of Law. I've been a criminal defense lawyer for the last 30 years. My practice is in Indianapolis. My office is in Indianapolis. I have a statewide practice there, and I've been involved in state politics for a long time now.
All right. Thanks, Ross. Welcome aboard. Hey, do you have a website or anything where you can, or a social media page where you'd like people to go when they fall in love with all them takes you're about to drop today?
You can find us at barthdems.org. It's a good place to connect with me and the Democratic Party in Columbus.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Let's welcome now Brandon Clark. Brandon, good morning. How are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Love to see you. Tell the people about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Brandon Clark. I host Social Society with Brandon Clark on YouTube. We do progressive politics. I also write on the People's Pulse. I'm a progressive myself, rather far in the left. I've been covering politics for 2 to 3 years now. I've been involved in following politics for about 8. I'm a Hoosier as well, so I'm happy to be on this panel. I think I'm the residential young person today also, so might have some differing takes there. I'm just excited to get into things. I cover mostly national politics on my channel. We cover social issues somewhat as well. So I'm also interested to get a chance to mix it up on some state and local level politics also.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. Welcome. Good to have you here. Now let's break up this sausage fest and welcome in our resident female voice today, Tracy Martin. Welcome.
All right. Hi. Welcome. To me. Hi.
How are you this morning?
So good morning, everyone. My name is Tracy Martin. I am the founder of NWI Takes Action, which is one of the local activist groups up here in Lake County. I'm up here in Munster, right outside of Chicago. I could go and walk over and be in Illinois in about 2 minutes if I wanted to.
Well, don't. Stay here with us. We need all the fighters in Indiana we can get. Say NWA Takes Action. You guys got a website or anything? Or a Facebook
You
group?
can find us on Facebook, and we just launched our first Substack. So we're excited about that. We have a podcast coming up for the region. So we are under NWI Takes Action there as well.
All right, thanks. Welcome to our fantastic panel. Let's go ahead and get started. We are going to begin this morning on Fascism Watch, as we have been for the last several weeks. And we're going to start with ICE raids. Now, we've had a series of escalating conflicts kind of throughout the country all week. Last week in San Diego, there was a confrontation between ICE officers and protesters. Then also last weekend in Cincinnati, Tuesday in Minneapolis, Chicago Wednesday, and then all hell broke loose last night in Los Angeles, where protesters clashed with LAPD, and Trump is invoking or calling up the National Guard, nationalizing the California National Guard to send in to break this thing up. Real scary escalation. Abdul, let's start with you. What's going on?
Donald Trump is being Donald Trump. A couple of things. I have a more nuanced position on the immigration issue. I really do, because my thing is we need the bodies. We need the people to do the work. Plain and simple. I'm not going out to a lemon field and picking lemons or tomatoes, and neither is anybody else on this panel. So let's just all be brutally honest with each other. America's always based its system on a source of cheap labor. It used to be called slavery. You can imagine that. Then that was called illegal. You can't do that anymore. We're always going to need a cheap source of labor. We need to make it easier for people to come in, because illegal immigration is still a crime. It's still you're still in violation of the law. Now, does this mean you need to be rounded up and sent to camps? Well, we've seen this play before, and it didn't end very well the last time I checked. So that's kind of point number one. Point number two, I'm all for people peacefully protesting. I'm a firm believer of the right to protest and address your grief with the government. However, when law enforcement do their job, you need to go stand over there. Yell and scream and call them whatever you want. Knock yourself out. I wouldn't do it personally. However, to interfere with a lawful extract removal, that's a crime. Now, number three, if you're here illegally, you are entitled to due process. Everyone is entitled to due process. It doesn't say citizens, it says persons. You're entitled to due process. Plain and simple. You can't just automatically round somebody up and put them on trains and drop across the border. We don't do that here. We have a system. We have due process. All you got to do is just follow the law, and this will take care of itself. But that's just me thinking out loud.
Yeah. Ross, I'm worried that the entire point of these raids and the way they were done so publicly and violently in many cases is precisely to provoke protest and find a reason to nationalize or to deputize the National Guard, to bring troops into the streets. Am I unnecessarily worried?
You're not. I don't think. Stephen Miller uttered the word insurrection, I think, about 2 seconds into the first video from Los Angeles. So, they know that's their push. It's scary when you evoke, the Insurrection Act, which they haven't done yet. But obviously, they're choosing those words for a reason. When you invoke the Insurrection Act, you allow martial law, essentially, in an area or potentially in the country. So I think there are people in the government. I mentioned Mr. Miller. There are others. I think there are people in our government that would like nothing more than that kind of a fascist control of the country. So I don't think anyone can brush this off anymore and say, oh, well, that's all talk or whatever. Abdul mentioned due process. One of the responses from the Trump folks is, well, look, you didn't care about due process when you came into the country illegally. Why do you want due process now? It's an asinine thing to say, obviously, because that's
not how due process works.
That's not how due process
I'm not a lawyer,
works.
but that ain't how that goes.
You have to have due process. We can't just take your word for it that you did something wrong. We have due process that they have to establish first that you did something wrong. So, I mean, it really stands on its head. But unfortunately, that's the kind of soundbite, sort of cliched thing that a person who doesn't think about the law and doesn't think about consequences will go, yeah, that sounds catchy. You didn't care about due process. But it's very frustrating, obviously.
Yeah. Brandon, it seems like these guys are changing the meaning of words, right? Like, they're calling protest insurrection, and they called insurrection a few years ago, I don't know, touristry? what are they doing here, man?
To me, it seems simple. It's like the same playbook that they always follow with these things, where MAGA will overreact or not overreact. They'll do the action, something that's either unconstitutional, it's illegal. The attack on the Capitol is a good example. And then the response happens. And then they try to use the response to justify the action. And I think that's what's happening here, where they send in ICE guards armed into a civilian neighborhood to come in. And I mean, with ICE, like, numbers that are important to know is 43% of the arrests or detainments that ICE has made under Trump are people with no criminal history. So the idea that you have to send in flashbang, heavily armed ICE guards to civilian neighborhoods, you're kind of asking for trouble. And then to try and justify that by the fact that people are protesting it is a bit insane to me, when, I mean, you have to like think of the moment where the Trump administration is disappearing people without charges for associations and beliefs. If we're talking about Mahmoud Khalil, without due process, if we're talking about Abrego Garcia, people are rightfully going to be worried about that. And I think that if you're going to have a job like ICE, you should probably be able to understand that, be able to de-escalate situations where people are worried about that. And if you can't, then you're probably not cut out for the job. And in what I read about most of these escalations from ICE, I would say that each and every one of those agents should probably be fired, bare minimum.
Bare minimum. Yeah. Tracy, thoughts?
Well, I mean, yes, Brandon, I think they should be in, but I don't think that that's in their job. I think part of disrupting and reestablishing a new norm of flashbangs in neighborhoods is part of is the implicit part of their new job description. Like, Trump has been shifting norms in our nation as fast as he can, and he's been frighteningly successful at it. And it's not going to be long until we are used to the idea of flashbangs in our neighborhoods. And I think part of the struggle is that we're going to have to find a way to humanize these stories in such a way that it reaches past MAGA noise. And I haven't yet seen anybody really successfully put a face to the people impacted by this. We can talk all we want about how it's, we're changing norms. We can throw all these words around, but we're not really connecting with people in a way that they can see, oh, this matters to me. And I mean, that's something that we struggle with up here. I have a friend who has a group that manages, she established this right after Trump took office, and they streamlined asylum applications. And the impact on the immigrant population that are just living like next door to you, you just don't think about it. They can't go to the grocery store because they're afraid. They have to organize these meal trains of people that can drive around, go to the grocery store. They have like these, sign up lists for volunteers to go shopping for them, or go drop off payments for them, or take their cars to be fixed, or find windows of time where they can drive to work safely. Like, the impacts on daily life for people all around by these ICE raids is just, it's upsetting and terrifying, because that could be us someday.
Yeah, it's very scary.
But at the same time, though, like I said, not to be the bad guy here, you're here illegally. there's a price to pay for being here illegally. Now, I believe we should make it easier. Hold on a second, Tracy. We should make it easier, make it simpler, for people to come here, get assimilated, the whole 9 yards. That I am all for. However, until such that time, you're still here illegally, and unfortunately, there are consequences for being here illegally. And unfortunately, this is one of the consequences. Now, if I was running the show, would I do this? Probably not. But you're still here illegally.
I would also tell you that more people, by any metric, raw numbers or per capita, the Obama administration deported far more people than Trump ever has. And right or wrong, they didn't create a fascist dictatorship to do it. So regardless of your position on deportation and immigration reform, you do not, these ICE raids are performative, and their purpose, as you mentioned before, is clearly goes well beyond immigration.
No, they're performative cruelty for a performative reason, to energize his base and to dehumanize these people. These are human beings. No one, I don't care if they're here illegally or not, should lose their children. No one should be afraid to go get a shot at the doctor. Like, this is not what we want, how we want to treat people.
Yeah. Say what you will. This is not the way to go about things, and I think we can all agree on that. I do need to move on. One person who has sort of been the face of this deportation escalation has been Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man who was whisked off to El Salvador with no due process. Well, Friday, listening to the news in the car on the way home, and I hear Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been returned to the United States. I'm like, oh, thank God. And then they hit you with, and he's going to face human trafficking charges in Tennessee. They didn't say anything about these before. It seems very suspicious that we're just hearing about this now. It sounds trumped up. I don't want to overreact, but that's just my first thoughts.
It's
Brandon,
everybody's
what do you
first
got?
thought.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Oh, that's certainly nice and convenient. Now all of a sudden he's a human trafficker now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brandon, you got thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember with this is that it doesn't matter. Even if he was a human trafficker, he was deported without due process. Like the Boston bomber got due process. The idea that because the government says you did something, they can now disappear you to essentially a death camp in a country that you have a court order to not be sent to. Completely irrelevant. I think it's a non-starter and it's mostly a distraction. Again, they're trying to use something to justify an action that doesn't really oh, he's a bad guy, so he deserves this unconstitutional action. No, I'm sorry, that it doesn't matter. As to whether the charges are true or not, I try to wait till more things come out. I also think it's kind of weird, but I know typically when things are filed in court, they're sealed and they aren't unsealed until later. So as for that could be kind of typical. I don't know. For me, though, the biggest thing is Trump lied. He lied to America and the courts. He said, I absolutely can't bring him back. He brought him back, so that was completely not true. And he deported him without due process. Whether or not he was a criminal, still wrong.
The whole thing's a mess. Well, we happen to have a couple of attorneys with us here. So, Abdul, Ross, maybe you two can speak on what you think's going on here.
Well, like I said, my thing is, Mr. Garcia may be a bad guy, but even bad guys are entitled to due process. Plain and simple. Even though Osama bin Laden would have been entitled to due process, a fair trial, then taken out and shot. As far as Mr. Garcia goes, he should have had his hearing and then deported to wherever. Let the facts fall where they may. But when the Trump people, we only get one chance to make a first impression in any case, in any matter. And when you kind of screwed up the first time, then no one believes you. The second, third, or fourth time. And I think Brandon and Tracy, are right to be skeptical of these, quote, okay, new charges. Why did he bring this up the first time he had charges? Well, could be a number of reasons. It doesn't matter now because the well's already been tainted. Mr. Garcia was deported without due process. Then bring him back to deport him again. It's like, there's something ain't right in the state of Denmark.
Yeah,
Maybe
Ross,
he
it
knows
smells
Jimmy Hoffa
fishy.
is.
Well, I think to me, even during the first Trump administration, with all of their nonsense, the career people at the Department of Justice remained essentially. Now, I've been fighting with the career people at Department of Justice for 30 years. And, I have a lot of disagreements in terms of the war on drugs and a lot of the way our laws have been prosecuted. However, for the most part, you certainly would not question the ethics. You would not question we're obviously going to do things by the book, so to speak. I can tell you in federal court most of the time, the FBI, the DEA, those guys are professionals. The U.S. attorneys are professionals. Now, the people that we see at the top, a Pam Bondi, a Kash Patel, they have no qualifications. They have no real sense of ethics. So if you had told me before, hey, these are probably trumped up charges, I think even as a defense attorney, I would say, well, they're probably not, but let's let due process play out and we'll see. Today, given not just Pam Bondi, but all of the people at the top of the Justice Department are completely unqualified political appointees. And so I think everybody should be skeptical of what they do. What you would hope for anyone who's been charged with a crime, he has his day in court. These certainly sound like trumped up charges. From what I heard initially, there was some question that at one point he had been stopped on the road with a group of construction workers, and maybe some of those construction workers in that group were undocumented at a construction site. To call that human trafficking, I guess we'll see. But I have a lot of concerns about the state of the Justice Department with the people that we have in charge.
Very scary stuff. I do need to move on to the next topic. So, we've got the whole budget thing, the big beautiful bill that's going through Congress right now, passed the House, went on to the Senate. But kind of on the side of that, Trump is asking Congress to eliminate $9.5 billion in spending. A little over $1 billion of that is for the Corporation on Public Broadcasting, that's PBS and NPR, and then there's like $8.3 billion in foreign aid programs, including like programs that work to end poverty in places like Africa. The PEPFAR program started by George W. Bush to eliminate AIDS. Big stuff. The quote from Russell Vogt, the OMB chair, says that the goal is to, quote, eliminate programs that are antithetical to American interests and worsen the lives of women and children, like family planning and reproductive health, LGBTQI plus activities, and equity programs, end quote. Tracy, what the hell?
Dude, you can tell I have feelings on this.
How are those things antithetical to American interests? How is it antithetical to American interests to like cure AIDS or inform
AIDS is
our
great.
public?
I don't know, dude. So
make AIDS great again.
It's like they're mustachioed villains. Like the performative cruelty of the Republican Party. You think that there's going to be no basement to which they'll fall and stop. Like, but there is there. What is it? Maybe they'll kill a puppy on live air for fun. Like, what else can you do? Who can possibly?
Like at the ready, they could always call her up for that job.
Oh my God. There are people. I'm sure Lauren Boebert, is it Boebert? Am I pronouncing it right? She would probably shoot a puppy on live air right for you. There you go. She's no problem with that. Like
Our hands are busy.
It's really it's sometimes shocking to me how anyone can really understand, believe, just even if you can't grasp the concept of soft power and why the optics of the United States as a purveyor of democratic and caring values is important to our position on the world stage. I can understand how that's something that people can't grasp. But what I can understand is why so many people are eager to embrace the ugliness of these policies. Who benefits when people starve? Who benefits whether we pay for it or not? Who benefits when AIDS proliferates around the world? Who benefits when vaccine research is cut so that these diseases that have been eradicated come back here into the United States? Keeping all of these things controlled and managed around the world stage helps us. And
Yeah,
it's just an issue that,
Abdul, is this just a matter like? Yeah, is this just a matter of they're like want to hurt people of color? I mean that's what it looks like from here. It's like, oh well, Africa, hell with them.
who cares about you?
Let me throw something in here real quick. I'm a firm believer, and I practice a policy what's called enlightened self-interest. In other words, it's doing well by doing good. It is helping people, but also making sure you get a benefit from it as well. So take out the whole humanitarian international aid discussion. Take out of the equation. If we don't do it, the Chinese will. Plain and simple. If we're going to basically say, okay, you people on your own, go get your own food, get your own shots. Well, guess what? The Chinese will like, hey, Africans, we love to help you, blah, 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 blah. So once again, Tracy, I agree with you, but for a totally different reason. You come from a humanitarian approach, come from a practical political perspective, which is like, look, if we don't help these guys, the other guys will. And by the way, this is how we end up with the whole thing in Afghanistan.
Yep.
I've seen this play before. We do it over and over and over and over and over again. We help people for a little while, then we leave them to their own devices, and then our enemies come in and take over. They're like, oh my God, how'd this happen? Like I said,
how'd they get their hands on all of our weapons?
Yeah, you live long enough, you'll see this.
You see this vacuum someone
2-3 times all over again. Like I said, if we don't help out, country, the other guys will. I'm a little bit with Corporation for Public Broadcasting because I love my friends in public broadcasting, but you know what? If I got to go sell advertising, you guys got to too, because I don't get a government subsidy.
Okay, well that's fine, except like in far-flung rural communities. This is an essential service in a lot of places. It's people's only access to accurate news or weather or emergency alerts. There does need to be some, I think, baseline government information service in those places. Yeah.
I'd be very careful to use the term government information. I grew up in the military, so
it does. There is the slippery slope where you get into state media if you take it to its logical conclusion. But I would
argue the policy of Corporation for Public Broadcasting made a lot more sense 50 years ago. We're all like little kids who are not born yet. I get all that because you didn't have access in very rural communities. Now I can pick you up on my cell phone. And I can pick up my cable company anywhere, in the universe. Who doesn't do streaming these days? So I would argue that maybe the formula needs to be changed a little bit. But maybe does Corporation for Public Broadcasting need as much as it did before? Maybe not. But like I said, love my friends in public broadcasting. Don't get me wrong; they're my brothers and sisters. However, if I get off my ass and go sell advertising or call it underwriting, because we don't call it, This program made funded by funded grant from the Alcoa Corporation. A generous grant.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I unfortunately I have to keep this thing moving along because we're already about 30 minutes in, and I really want to get to the big story that sucked all of the oxygen this week, and that is the Trump-Musk big ugly breakup. Ross, did you get your popcorn?
Well, I think as was mentioned earlier, who could not see something like this coming? I think a lot of it may come down to the electric vehicle mandates that were taken out by the big beautiful bill. I think that's the one thing that Elon Musk stands to actually lose the most from personally. He may care about the deficit, whatever his reason, but those long-term incentives for electric vehicles obviously are something that he cares about. Look, I think if you the way Elon Musk was brought into the government as a quasi government official, the way he was allowed to continue, and it's similar to what we were talking about with the international aid. So much of this has been a drumbeat from going back to at least Reagan, right? Oh, we spend all of our money on international aid. We give all of our money to PBS. We give all of these government workers are all, and it's a tiny, tiny percentage. And all of these government workers are all lazy, and they all work at the BMV, whatever the cliche.
Yeah.
And you can use that sort of rhetoric to come in and do real damage by taking experts and people that know what they're doing out of a lot of these real functions. So allowing that power to be given to somebody, and frankly, with the Congress essentially just abdicating their entire role by saying, yeah, you guys do what you want. That gets us in a spot like this. And obviously, when you give somebody all of that power and then you try to take it away, billionaires don't take no for an answer very often.
Yeah. Brandon, so this thing started when Musk came out against the big budget bill. He's right to oppose it, but is he right for the right reasons?
No. He really just wants more poor people to be put at a loss. He wants more spending to be cut. I don't think he really cares about the reasons that the bill is bad. Like, for instance, it raising taxes on anyone who makes less than $51,000 a year, it pulling healthcare from 7 to 14 million Americans, the things Trump ran on, like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime being temporary. It cuts FEMA, it cuts food stamps. That's going to cut school lunch programs. I mean, the bill just across the board, horrendous pile of crap. Elon Musk only cares because it affects his business and because, his Doge cuts weren't codified. I do think it's funny, though, and awfully telling that his self-own, it was a self-own, but what he thought was an own on Trump was saying, yeah, I donated $250 million to a pedophile. I helped elect a pedophile. And then Trump, to get back at Elon, was like, yeah, I gave all of your sensitive data to a drug addict. Like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we taking these people serious still? And why is nobody else like, am I the only person who realized that this is what's happening? That they're like owning themselves, like this is their morals, but they think like it's just rich people mantra, I guess, that like, no, it's more telling of them than me. But no, like you befriended a pedophile, you gave our sensitive data to a drug addict, if what you're saying is true. So like, get rid of them.
Yeah, right. Take your pick. Tracy, is this thing for real or is this all for show?
Oh, I think no. I'm torn on that. Part of me is, I think on Elon's side, it's for real. I think Trump played him. I think Trump used him for the exact purpose that he served, that he distracted everybody with Doge, served as his shill. He got to get all the hate. Elon got all the hate for all of the issues that Trump did. Everybody was up in arms about the destruction of our bureaucracy, which means our country doesn't work. And Trump got to go and sell as much crypto as he wanted. And this is of a piece with how Trump has treated many of the people in the inner circle. It's a revolving door for a reason. And the way he's treating Elon now is the exact same way he treated all of his supporters that are no longer with him now. So yeah, no, I do believe it's real, but I believe it's really playing out the way Trump wants it to play out. And I think Elon got played and he didn't like it. Oh, how sad.
Abdul, Musk got what he wanted, right? Like, I mean, he might be gone, but he has all of our data. Is big balls and the other 20 somethings still in the government, doing
This
stuff for
reminds me of a
Doge.
scene out of. This reminds me of a really bad late '80s, early '90s science fiction film called Robot Jocks. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it.
I missed
heard
that
of
one.
this movie.
It's basically it's like the world's run by billionaires, and they have like these super athletes. They get in like these like Voltron type robots, and they start fighting each other, and it's a really bad. Let's put it this way: the movie's only the more drunk you are, the better the movie gets.
It sounds like an MST3K riff track waiting to happen.
Yeah. It's Mystery Science Theater 3000 all over again. That's what when I watch this Donald Trump, Elon Musk back and forth, that's what it reminds me of. It's two billionaires get into a fight over anything and everything, and all of us are sort of caught in the middle of the whole 9 yards. What I thought was interesting, though, on the whole budget cuts thing, you got Musk saying, "Oh no, this is all BS. It's not going to fly. It's not going to work. This is nothing but a big, beautiful, bad bill." And then you got Trump, saying, "No, poor little Elon. We should take his contracts away from him." Like, why is anybody shocked or surprised at anything? The only thing missing is Larry Stooge with these two. That's, by the way, Brand, that's a Three Stooges reference. So.
Right,
just go on BTV and click on Three Stooges. You'll just die like there's a lot of dated references. So just kind of keep that.
There we go.
And a lot of punching and slapping.
Yeah,
but no, I mean the whole Trump Musk battle fight. It doesn't. I'm not surprised at all. And actually, I would say the biggest losers of all this are Republicans, the rank and file. Because do I side with Trump and Musk funds a primary challenge, or do I, side with Musk and piss Trump off? So you lie down with dogs. This is why you wear a flea collar,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they have to worry that all of those, like, I agree with you. I feel sorry for those Republicans because they all are so excited about these young new tech bro kids that are coming in and these guys that are now, so Elon-y. And now they have to worry that they'll lose them because that was they're so excited about that new energized Republican political base of young, disgusting boys. So, what do they do now?
And I just want to say quickly, any Democrat who says, and this is as much as I love Ro Khanna, any Democrat who says that the Democrats should take Elon into the party, primary them right now, please.
Yeah,
Somebody.
do not trust anybody who wants to even think about snuggling into bed with that guy.
No, gross. You would no.
So Ross, the thing I worry about with this whole thing is that we overlooked the big story in that Musk has all this data, and now the Trump regime is working with Palantir to synthesize that data into some giant, all-seeing, all-knowing database that has all of our IRS information, all of our Social Security information, and all of our social media posts. So they know everything about us.
It's got. I think I saw this plot before. It's called Hydra, Captain America, Winter Soldier.
Abdul, I was just
it's Skynet. They're inventing Skynet, right?
Is this volunteer for a reason?
Yeah. So I think Ross, did Musk get the better of this one? Him and his buddy Thiel?
Well, look, I think that remains to be seen. I think that's always been part of the Doge sort of facade was getting into that data because they know the value of data. I mean, most of our tech profit for the last 20 years has come from data, not from services. So sure, they do. They also, Vance is in a very interesting place. He's obviously been bankrolled by Peter Thiel through his entire career. And Thiel and Musk are both sort of comic book villain guys with a really twisted view of and a really fascist view of the world. And right now Vance is, I think, in an odd spot because he's obviously has to show loyalty to Trump, but he's a 40-year-old guy with a future. So he may find himself, siding more with the money than with the boss.
He was awfully quiet for much of the last few days. He finally came out and said some nice things about Trump and distanced himself from Musk some. But yeah, he's in a tough spot. Musk called for Trump to be impeached and Vance to replace him. I think that was the goal all along.
Yeah, I would say that Vance was the biggest loser if it wasn't already inevitable that nobody would ever elect this man president. And so, like, who really cares?
Well, they wouldn't have to, right?
Well, I mean, in that aspect, I just meant
Trump,
for his
there's
future
JD.
aspirations.
People said that about Donald Trump in 2014, 2015, a lot. So I wouldn't be complacent about that.
I think the reasons that they said it about Trump.
Just a quick FYI here on the whole 2016 thing. Hillary Clinton only lost the election by basically 50,000 votes in 3 states. Is what it was. Had 3 states had the votes change in 3 states. Actually, she's shown up in Michigan and Wisconsin and a couple other places. We'd had an entirely different outcome. So
sure, and we could say the same thing about Vance next time.
Well, I think
we can't ever say, "Oh, well, he would never be." I agree. He's not a charismatic guy, but I mean, if he has lots of money and lots of data behind him, I'm not wishing for him. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think with Trump, a lot of people kind of just underjudged the underlying bigotry that still existed.
The final thing I wanted to look at here in these national stories is with.
By the way, I don't think
Musk
Trump is a bigot. I think Trump's favorite color is green.
Amen. That's exactly what it is. I think he's embraced all of the ugliness as much as he can because it lines his pocket.
I think he's a bigot too.
I think that makes him a bigot. Yeah, I think that would make him a bigot.
Yeah, fair.
The last thing I wanted to look at in our national stories here today is with Musk leaving government, Russell Vogt, who we mentioned earlier, slides into the position leading Doge. And this guy is the architect of Project 2025. He is detail-oriented and fanatical in his Christian nationalism in a way. He's focused in a way that Musk was not. He is in many ways the Rasputin of this regime. What do you guys think of Russell Vogt? Anybody as worried about him as I am?
The sequel's always worse than the originals.
Right. Again, I think the whole thing is that this was the plan all along. Musk was show, he was distraction, money, but this guy is where things are going to get real scary in terms of changing our government. Anybody have any last words on our national stories before we move on to Indiana?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is I definitely agree with you. I think it would have been a much bigger story if Trump puts the Project 2025 guy in front of Doge off the rip, and it gives him the chance to do it under the radar when what's taking the headlines is Musk leaving, and nobody's really talking about the fact that
I wasn't paying attention to this at all, and you're right, it's terrifying.
Yep.
We don't want this man in charge of our government.
2026 gets more important every day.
Yes, indeed. Particularly here in Indiana, we're going to move on to our state stories now in a little segment I like to call Around the Corn.
That's awesome.
So we're going to start with no longer Hoosier, but once a Hoosier, always a Hoosier, Pete Buttigieg, who topped a poll this week of Democratic hopefuls for president in 2028. Now, this poll showed Pete with a little over 31% of support among Democratic voters, AOC 19, Kamala Harris about 16.5, Cory Booker 10, Gavin Newsom 7, Josh Shapiro a little less than 5, Gretchen Whitmer a little less than 4, Raphael Warnock 1.5. What do you all think about that? I'm going to start with Ross here. What are those? What does that say to you? Do you like Pete? Are you a fan? Is there someone missing? Overrated? Underrated? What are your thoughts on this poll?
Well, number one, I don't think I heard J.B. Pritzker's name, and I would not count him out going forward, both with his resources and his message. I think he's been, a vocal, outspoken critic of the president. So I wouldn't leave Pritzker out. I think at this stage, a poll like this, what you're really talking about is a name recognition poll for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
People are not really focused in that way, but they know, AOC's name is somebody people know. I don't discount it, obviously, but I do think at this stage, a poll like that is a lot more like, which one of these names do you recognize? Now, look, I think Pete has shown himself to be a formidable candidate, and a great speaker, has a great message, can handle himself in any crowd. So certainly he's not somebody that anybody should take lightly. And I think as the process plays out, he's going to be somebody to reckon with in the primaries.
Abdul, what do you like the beard? You like the beard on Pete?
Well, I was kind of joking. Said that's evil Pete Buttigieg from the parallel universe. My Star Trek friends will get that. Actually, I've known Pete for years. I knew he was mayor of South Bend. We got along really, really well. We always had, even though we came from different political perspectives, we always had a healthy respect for each other. So I think, and I agree with Ross. I mean, at this point in time, you talk about 2028. I mean, a day in politics is a lifetime. We're talking about at least 2 years out. I mean, you can go back to the 1991, trips up to New Hampshire and Iowa. Does anybody remember who those people were? No, of course not. The only
I
person
still
you might
remember Paul Tsongas.
Yeah, exactly. Paul Tsongas with Bill Clinton. Or anybody remember a guy named Jerry Brown? Yeah, exactly. So I think 2028's a ways out. Now, granted, this doesn't mean if you're going to run president, you don't start now. And I think he's laying some groundwork, sort of test the water, see what's out there. Then the question is, is America ready for an openly gay president? I say sure. But we got a black guy, almost had a female, gay male's next. It doesn't. So to me, I think
Look
we're
at that rugged masculine beard. Yeah, he's trying to,
Yeah, now needs is a flat t-shirt on a package of brawny towels while we're at it. So,
Brandon, you're a leftist like myself. Do you trust Pete, or do you think he's a neoliberal in progressive clothing?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say I do agree with both Ross and Abdul for the most part. I think J.B. Pritzker is the big snub. I also think that this far out a poll, it's like a popularity contest. Pete just had the big flagrant appearance. He's typically on like Fox and stuff. I think that's probably why he's leading the poll. I'm not a huge fan or hater. I'm kind of indifferent on Pete. Electability wise, I think he makes sense. He's a good communicator. He's comfortable in spaces of opposition, like on Fox, and he can carry himself well. I do think when he ran last time, he struggled with the black vote. You almost have to carry the black vote to win in the Democratic primary. This was Bernie Sanders' big downfall as well. So I don't know how realistic he would ever be in a primary. I do think he's a fine candidate. I'm not a huge fan of centrist Democrats. I also think the party is stronger when we lean into our values rather than trying to play the middle and take who Republicans are losing. I would prefer if AOC was at the top of the poll, right? I would prefer like more left-leaning candidates. I'm a fan of Gretchen Whitmer even. I think that she's, if we're talking underrated on the list, I think that she should be higher.
Tracy's a Michigander. She's got thoughts.
Yeah, well, AOC, Gretchen Whitmer, Marianne Williamson even. I think we need more lefty kind of progressive voices, populists, speak to the people, not as much for corporations or the top-down kind of, I think there's a bad taste in people's mouth from the Bidenite type Democrats, I could say.
Yeah, but you guys got to remember something. And it's good to have these conversations and these types of forums, but the ultimate goal in politics is to win, period. Mm-hmm. You can't win. None of this other stuff matters. Doesn't matter how progressive you are. Hold on a second. Doesn't matter how progressive you are, how conservative you are. If you cannot get a candidate who wins.
Well, that's my point. That's my point, is I don't think that Pete really he doesn't appeal to the demographics necessary to be a strong Democratic candidate. And I think what better appeals to those demographics would be someone who leans more into progressive values. You would carry the Black vote better. You're going to carry the young vote better. You're going to carry the woman vote better.
And
while Pete could do some of those things,
the centrist vote better, where most Americans are these days.
I just don't know if that strategy didn't really work for Hillary. It worked for Biden because of COVID. It didn't work for Kamala. You could say it worked for Clinton because of Ross Perot. It worked for Obama because of the momentum from Black president possibility.
Actually, hold for a second, Brandon. On the whole Ross Perot thing, I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh boy,
Ross
this is
Perot
way back.
voted away from George Herbert Walker Bush than he did from Bill Clinton.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not saying he took predominantly from Clinton. Ross Perot definitely leaned more right. But I'm saying even in that is what I'm saying. He took the votes from the right.
Yeah.
And it gave Clinton more of a push to win, more so than him appealing to the middle. Because I know that's where a lot of centrists like to point is Bill Clinton and the kind of neoliberalism and the connecting the 3 points and all of that. But I think a lot of outside factors kind of played more into that. And I think if we could reignite the momentum we had with like a Bernie Sanders, but with a candidate who could win the Black vote and young vote a lot better, that we could fare a lot stronger.
Clinton only got 44% of the vote in 92. So obviously some votes went somewhere.
We need, just from an activist perspective, the divisions between progressives and centrists within the Democratic Party are hot, and they're getting hotter. Up in Lake County, we have a really centrist congressman, and he holds those tensions tightly, and it's difficult for him. But the progressive wing is growing. It's restive, and there is a super hunger for embracing traditional liberal values. That's why I went when you said Gretchen Whitmer. I'm from Michigan. I loved Gretchen, but her appeasement of Trump in these last few months have really damaged her brand. Same for Gavin Newsom. What on God's green earth was he thinking launching a podcast where he brings in Trumpies to appease them?
My issues with Gavin Newsom are more pertaining to his treatment of the homeless population, but the podcast was a miss too.
Oh,
yeah, he's missed a lot.
You guys got to understand though. You may not like Donald Trump, may not be able to stand Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is still president of the United States, period. And he still wields a lot of power. And until you get that job, you got to deal with him, plain and simple.
Yeah.
But you also have to think about tomorrow.
I do have to move on to the next topic here, but I want to know where the hell Tim Walz is in that poll. That's my guy.
I know. I miss him.
All right, real quick, the state unveiled a first draft of new A through F school grades. We've gone away from these over the last several years. It's been suspended since like 2018 while they sort of rejigger the formula. Then COVID happened. I never knew how effective these were at communicating how well schools do. This new system apparently scores students on a more holistic level, so it's not all test scores. Ross, what do you think? Is it good for them to be changing this formula? Did the A through F grades do anything for anybody?
Well, it did a lot for Tony Bennett back in the day because he sold some of those A's to some of his favorite schools for money. So other than the bribery aspect of it, no, I'm not sure. Look, you have to get under the hood here. The goal of the Republican supermajority is to destroy public education. That is their goal. The goal of DeVos, the goal of that entire movement is to destroy public education. So all of this tinkering ultimately comes back to again and again and again, we want to take money away from public schools. We want to take power away from public school teachers' ability to organize. We would love to give all of that money to our friends who own private schools and for-profit charter schools. So these kinds of things are to me, not serious. And I don't think whether you I think taking a focus away from standardized testing is important and something people have called for. That's also been a boondoggle. Those are all privately contracted to donors who administer those tests. It's all part of the same process to take money away from school kids and give it to the private sector. So yeah, I guess I don't care. I don't think the purpose here is to make schools better. I think it's going to be a tool that's going to be used to punish public schools. Okay,
I got to call bullshit on this one. Ross, I love it. Ross, I love you to death. But now I got to put on my little bit of a fighter hat here. I've covered school choice in Indiana for 20 years. I've always been a big believer in school choice. I do not apologize for it. I'm a firm believer that if you have a school that doesn't work for you and your kid, there's another school that does, then you should be allowed to transfer your kid to that school and take the money with you, because the job of education is to educate students. It is not to employ teachers. That's kind of point number one. Point number two, the problem with the 8F system, which I will admit has always been every 2-3 years we try a new type of reform. Reform takes longer than 2 to 3 years. How about we let the reform sit for like 5 years, kind of monitor it, and then tinker around the edges? But this wholesale reform, schools can't catch up, teachers can't catch up, and administrators can't catch up. And by the way, I've taught in public school for 20 years also, taught in college and community college and also the high school level. So I know exactly what I'm talking about from a teacher perspective as well. I think the A through F system works in the sense that it's easy for parents to get their arms around. This is an A school. This is a B school. This is a C school. Because people may not understand, okay, 1 through 10, 10 being highest, 1 being lowest, but A through F, basically everybody gets and everybody can understand. I think the issue is with school reform is actually giving the school reform actually a chance to work and see what does work and what doesn't work.
So I will tell you that school choice has been tried in a lot of places, no more than Indiana. It's never improved test scores. It's never improved the outcome for students. So it's nice to say, oh, choice is better. If this school doesn't work for your kid, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it hasn't worked. So you can say it makes sense, but it's never worked. It's never worked.
School choice.
Yeah. So I think I may, correct me if I'm wrong, I may be the only person on this screen right now with kids in the K-12 public system in Indiana, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, yay. All right. So I'm going to jump in here real quick though and say, first off, this A to F stuff means nothing to me. And Abdul, I'm going to argue with you a little bit. In Munster here, we are so insanely proud of our schools. We follow every little bitty thing here. I don't believe that an A to F grade is any more impactful or meaningful to parents in judging our school's performance than any other metrics around. And as a parent with children that are autistic, part of me longs for what some other public school districts have in other states for, say, a specialized charter, a special education school. But the fact remains is that those things are few, far between, and that is not what school choice does. But what does protect my kids is a very robust and strong local public school education. So no, I have charters up and down and right and left all around me up here. None of them do anything for my kids. None of them are a viable option for my kids. And none of them provide me with any choices that I would want to take. But what they do take is public dollars away from my schools that I pay for. So yeah.
But here's the question though. What is the point of education? Is it point to educate students or is it to employ teachers? Because here's the thing. If let's say Indiana spends on average $8,000 per kid. We'll just throw a number out. $8,000 and change. The kid goes to the charter school, with a voucher get $6,000. That's still $2,000 left over. Matter of fact, it's actually more money for traditional public school. They've got less kids to educate. So how do charters take money away from traditional public schools?
You can look at the numbers I've done. Millions of dollars away from public schools in every district. Millions of dollars.
And it's really simple,
and
right?
Especially, go ahead, Brandon.
I was gonna say it's really simple. There's a pot of money per state. Like think of it as a state. The state is the pot of money for education. You have a certain amount of schools in this pot pulling from it to take money to fund them. School choice doesn't add more money to the pot. It adds more schools taking money from the pot. That leaves less money for every school. We know from almost any study that is done that socioeconomic status is the biggest indicator of educational or academic performance. So it's largely a resource game. And the problem with school choice is that schools are funded through property taxes. So when you're allowing somebody to move that taxation out of the district of that school, you're not replacing it with anything. So those schools in that district become poorer. And we know for a fact when schools become poorer, the students perform worse. When students become poorer, they perform worse. So what we should be trying to do is cycle more funding into the schools that need it and not away from them to where, well, the people, beneficial enough to where they can foot that $2,000 difference from the voucher. Well, they can go to the nice schools, but the ones who don't have enough money, they have to go to the poor schools.
Not to mention that 60% of the people who receive vouchers have never sent their kids to public schools.
So what? And
yeah. All right. We could go on this all day, and I would love to, but I do have to talk about the IEDC a little bit here. So an audit, a preliminary review of IEDC, that's the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. It's a public-private partnership between the government and corporations to bring economic development to the state. It's often been a boondoggle, and so this preliminary review finds that deals involving tens of $millions are done on handshakes. There's folks who are compensated within the IEDC, and then they've got side jobs directly related to the public interest. There's all sorts of conflicts of interest, major concerns about business practices. Abdul, this is right in your neighborhood. You may even know a lot of the principals here.
Actually, the former head of the IEDC was a good friend of mine.
The IEDC has been quite a mess, I feel like, and a source of potential corruption the entire time it's been around. Do we just need to pull the plug on this thing, or can it be reformed?
You need some sort of statewide coordinated economic development commission. I mean, you do. Just like there's one in Bartholomew County, one in Northwest Indiana, there's one here in Indianapolis. You need some type of organization to sort of help coordinate a lot of this stuff. Now, should there be more transparency? Sure, no one's going to argue with that. The problem is when you have this sort of economic development type deal type things, when you are in the process of trying to get someone to come to Indiana or say Tippecanoe or Marion County, you don't want, as my mother said, you don't want all your business out in the street. Here's what we're going to do this. So there has to be some sort of confidentiality, as you're negotiating and putting together these deals, because hey, this is the 21st century. Everybody's got it's very, once information gets out, there's no way to put that genie back in the bottle. With that said, however, could the IEDC use some cleanup? Sure, it could. I mean, it's been around for 20 years and change. And any organization that's been around for 20 years, they tell you that they don't need to make changes. Then that's an organization that needs to go out of business. Plain. I mean, how many of us do our same? Ross, you guys don't do politics the same we did 20 years ago in Bartholomew County. Of course not. Brandon, you guys don't do the same thing. The way progressive things 20 years ago, of course not, because times have changed. So to change things with the way IEDC does business, sure, but to get rid of it, no, that's a bad idea.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on. Wanted to make sure we got that in, snuck it in, before we get into some spicy stuff for the last half hour here. Diego Morales.
But here's the question, though.
In the news.
Is he said on his tiptoes in that picture, though? That's the question.
What's that?
Is he said on tiptoe in that picture right there?
Oh man, low blow. Oh, almost as low as Diego. No, so he's getting a couple challengers now. The Secretary of State races are decided internally within the party at their convention. It's not a primary, but Diego has been involved in scandal frequently. So there are a couple more Republicans lining up to challenge him. There's Knox County Clerk Dave Shelton, who previously ran for Secretary of State in 22. And then Jamie Rittenauer, who ran for governor last year. She's a Christian nationalist weird bird, let's just say. She's different.
Let me put it this way. When I first met Jamie Rittenauer at the convention a couple years ago, it was over in Henry County. They were doing like a town hall type deal, meet the candidates, and everyone was on stage except Jamie had her Bible with her. Okay, you're a Christian one, fine. I mean, you're as religious, I am not. Whatever. but whenever she would walk across the stage, she would keep the Bible for you guys in the theater in her downstage hands. So the Bible would always be facing the audience. So she'd walk across the stage, the Bible face, and then when she'd pivot to go back the other way, she'd switch, put the Bible in her other downstage hand, and walk back the other way. I'm like, okay. And I kind of noticed that because I got a theater background. Like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can wear a little bit too much and preach a little bit too much. Like, like was it like your husband like in show choir or something? What the heck is going on here? Because you're kind of wearing this on your sleeve just a little bit too much. You kind of laid out protest just a little bit too much, if I may quote Shakespeare.
Yes. Is Diego going to
joke? I appreciate it, sir.
Is Diego going to survive this? Is he going to be the nominee in 26?
I would say the every day. Here's what I know so far. I would say that the odds increase every day that Diego will be challenged. And by the way, Curtis Hill, the former Attorney General, may also be running for Secretary of State as well. A little bit of breaking news on your program today.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I think the thing is Diego Morales and a Curtis Hill type character, they pull from that same universe of people, kind of like with Jamie Rittenhour. So, and I think that opens the door for Doug Shelton to get in because Shelton has sort of the non-crazy, delegate. So I would argue
the non-zealot lane. Yes.
Yeah, I would argue
Tracy, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, the more people get in the race, if they're Diego type, it's bad for Diego. If they're more the Shelton type, I think Shelton gets it. But then again, this is also a nominated convention. Anything and everything can happen. That's how we got Micah Beckwith the last go around.
Oh,
God. A lot of horse trading and backslapping. Yeah.
What would be the worst? Like, here's the question. Let's be real. I mean, this convention basically will help determine who are next. I don't know that we're going to have a viable Democratic candidate. So who scares us the most out of this cohort of crazy?
I would say Dave Shelton should scare you guys the most.
Yeah, whoever's the most effective at legislating scares me the most. Who could actually get things done. What I will say, though, is given Donald Trump's rap sheet, I don't know how much this guy's corruption is going to matter.
You make a very good point. Yeah.
Well, actually, Brandon, it's funny you bring that up because Diego actually may not be able to serve next year. Because here's why. The Marion County Election Board, little small organization of people here, there's no reason why every county has one. It's basically made up of the makeup of your county. For example, in Hamilton County, it's 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat. Here, it's 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. Unanimously, all 3 members of the election board a couple weeks ago voted to launch a formal investigation as to whether Diego Morales broke election law by taking video footage from a trip to a vote center that was done on government time and using it in a political ad. You cannot do that. That violates Title III, which is a Class 6 felony, which is 6 months behind bars or 2 years in prison. Wow. If they and they're going to refer that to the Marion County Prosecutor's Office, they're going to do an investigation and then refer to the Marion County Prosecutor. Mm-hmm. If the prosecutor comes back with a felony charge and a conviction, if Diego Morales is a Secretary of State, he cannot serve as Secretary of State. He literally has to step down right then and there. So unlike the presidency where Donald Trump can serve, even though he's a convicted felon, in Indiana, you're a convicted felon. You cannot serve in public office, period.
Crazy how the standards are harder for a lower office, and again, it's not like Trump didn't interfere in an election himself either. So
I would hope, and you mentioned Micah Beckwith, obviously the makeup of delegates at a Republican convention in Indiana is certainly not the makeup even of the Republican electorate. It is very, very radical. So it may very well be that the most radical among them is their choice, certainly has been the norm. But I would not, and obviously I'm here looking at the elections next year and as a party official, I'm not writing anything off in 2026. I mean, so there's no presidential election on the ballot. There is no Senate candidate on the ballot. A lot of those.
There's no governor candidate either.
The top of the ticket is the Secretary of State. So there are a lot of what I would call Trump Republicans who are Trump first, Republican second, who aren't going to care anything at all about this election. And a lot of those people are not going to turn out. Okay.
That's exciting.
So Turnout should be lower, particularly among a lot of those part-time and first-time voters who I'm here to vote for Trump. If you remember in 2018, we had much higher than normal turnout for a midterm, and the reason was that Trump was here stumping for Braun, big time. He was here holding rallies again and again and again, saying a vote for Braun is a vote for me. And a lot of those Trump voters came out and voted in that election. There's nothing like that here. You're not going to see Trump coming here to stump for Diego Morales. So I think turnout is going to be, and obviously midterm elections don't favor the incumbent party. So look, it's an uphill climb, but there are a lot of dominoes that fall in our favor next time.
So do you think that let's play a game? Would you, if we got like an activist base of Democrats to really push for voting, do you think it's possible that we could retake the Secretary of State position
with a low turnout election and massive turnout in the region, massive turnout in Bloomington, massive turnout in Indianapolis? That's called Barack Obama, right?
Exactly, my friend.
That's how that works. So of course it can be done. It's
and Democrats can win in Indiana. You just need the right type of Democrat to win statewide.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the wrong kind of Democrat here and keep it in the Circle City and move on to Mayor Joe Hogsett.
Oh.
This week, a second city county councilor, Andy Nielsen, an East Side Democrat, joined Jesse Brown in calling for the mayor's resignation. A report came out this week, which actually it was last week, that technically cleared the Hogsett administration of any wrongdoing in a sexual harassment scandal involving Hogsett's former chief of staff, Thomas Cook. Well, it turns out maybe this report didn't include everything, and it was written by a firm that's got former members of the administration in it. Joe Hogsett was texting female staffers, hitting them at 2 a.m. with "you up." Is this the one that finally gets him to go? Abdul, this is right in your wheelhouse.
Literally is in my wheelhouse. I've covered this story for the past 2 years now, and it ain't getting any prettier. Let's put it that way. As far as the latest scandal goes, like I said, it's just more. It's more of a slow drip. To date, however, the mayor still enjoys support, or let's put it, I won't say enjoy support for most of the council, but I would say 2/3 of the council isn't ready to throw the mayor overboard yet. Yeah, 2 Democrats who call for his resignation, assuming all 5-6 Republicans do. That's like what, 8 out of 25. So you still need about another 8 more and some change. And I would look at one of the African American female Democrats in the council, because if one of them breaks and says the mayor needs to go down, the mayor needs to step down and say someone like a Maggie Lewis, who's been a big ally with the mayor, and she's my councilwoman and a good friend. If Maggie were to say, I don't think Joe Hogsett could stay, be an effective mayor, then I would then I'd just watch the dominoes just fall like crazy. Mm-hmm. But that discussion, there have been some discussions about the mayor's behavior. The Black Democrats, my sources tell me, are still pretty much, they're not ready. I won't say they're behind them as much as they are not ready to throw them overboard yet.
I see. Thank you. But Brandon, I don't know if you get much indie news over your corner of the state there, but I mean, this guy seems like the kind of Democrat that has been the mold in our party for too long, and folks like you and I are trying to get him to take a different direction. Mm-hmm. Does centrist Democrats being shitty help us?
I don't think so, as much as I would love for it to. I think optically, we're just all going to get branded in as Democrats. And so when something negatively reflects Democrats, independent voters aren't going to be like, well, that was a centrist and it's not the progressive. It's just, another Democrat or whatnot. So I don't know if that helps us necessarily. And like you said, I don't get a lot of indie politics. I don't cover a lot of indie politics, but everything I've read about him seems to be like he doesn't have the best politics. He's not the most effective at leadership, and his behavior is deplorable. So I would like to see him, Indiana, move left, move past him. I don't know what exactly has to happen for that to happen, but he seems to be like, he has like bad opinions on crime. One good thing I'll say, I guess, is I saw that he tried to ban assault weapons. So kudos to him for that.
Yeah, Tracy, now you get that Chicago market TV up there. That's some real corruption.
Yeah,
no, but Chicago corruption actually works, though.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about it. I lived in Chicago when Mayor Daley tore up Meigs Field, and God bless him, man. The stuff that man would do, he got shit done. But on this, Bill Clinton's peccadillos are still impacting the Democratic brand. The idea of white centrist men. If we want, as a party, to position ourselves as on the right side of moral history, we need to stop this shit. Keep it in your pants. Stop sexually harassing your staff. Just don't. It's really easy to not text your staffers you up. Just don't do it. Just you cannot behave that way, because it damages us all, and it makes the electability of anyone much more difficult. Because Brandon's right. Voters are not making those distinctions. People don't have the attention span to parse the different wings of the party. They're just going to see another white guy with a shit-eating grin behaving inappropriately. And this isn't Trump. Our party, we position ourselves as people that demand and expect better values from our candidates. And we can't say that if people keep acting like this. So he's got to get the hell out of there. He's just got to go.
We threw Al Franken overboard for a lot less.
So I've always maintained, you in politics, don't get your meat in the same place where you get your bread. This is why God invented Las Vegas. Go to Las Vegas.
Seriously.
Go get whatever you need to get out of your system, male, female, whatever, and then come back here and do your friggin' job. Just don't pull a Diego Morales and try to charge the taxpayers for the trip. That's all I ask.
Sit where you sleep.
So I'm going to put on my criminal defense lawyer hat here for a second. Look, he didn't text anybody at 2:00 in the morning and say you up. Okay, that didn't happen. He did not sexually harass anyone. I saw the text. These are people that he worked with, that he had a reason to communicate with. Remember, with all due respect, they're referred to as, I wrote it down, boundary crossing, exploiting power dynamics, and unwelcomed persistence. The unwelcome persistence was asking a person an innocuous question and then texting back, hey, respond to me. Look, ultimately, these are people who have a lawsuit pending, right? Yeah. So they also have a reason to frame things in a certain way. And they're going to frame it as boundary crossing and power dynamics. These are all people he worked with. These are all relatively innocuous. He's not accused of sexually harassing anyone. He's not accused. What he was accused of, which this report, I guess, exonerated him by that they followed the proper procedures with HR and all of those things when one of his staff was a creep. But he has not been accused of being a creep here. And I think a lot of these, when I read these texts, and I was ready, look, I'm not a big fan, right? I'm that's not my brand of politics. From Hogsett and Evan Bayh, and that's not my group. But at the same time, look, we have to be real careful about you mentioned Al Franken. We got to be real careful about using a movement to paint people with a broad brush. I just didn't see, and just being candid, maybe I'm an old white guy too, but I mean, look, I didn't see anything in his text which would raise a red flag to me and say, oh my God, you're you are hitting on these people, or you are asking them to do something inappropriate. I just didn't see it. So look, the politics of it he's going to have to deal with, but I don't know. I think there's a reason why these things weren't originally brought into it, because I mean, unless you paint them in a way that we don't know, I don't really see it. So
yeah, well, it sounds like it's not illegal to be kind of creepy. Unfortunately, we have to leave that one there. We got about 10 minutes left here, and we've got one big thing to still talk about, and that is Mike Braun fired all 3 of remaining IU elected trustees. He had already had the ability to appoint 6. 3 were elected by alumni and faculty and whatnot. So he fired those 3, including Vivian Winston, who only had a couple weeks left in her term. She was a frequent critic of IU President Pam Whitten. He also fired or removed Jill Moore Burnett and Donna Spears and replaced them with 3 people. Brian Eagle is an Indianapolis attorney and wealth advisor. The other, Sage Steele, is a former ESPN anchor and culture warrior. And the final new trustee is Jim Bopp, a Terre Haute-based attorney, one of the most consequential conservative legal figures of probably the last 50 years. Very, very controversial, highly partisan picks. We have any other IU alumni in here, or is it just me?
Just you, I think.
Just
I
me?
went to Illinois,
wow.
so no offense.
Hey,
well, not Bloomington.
I am exceptionally disappointed, to say the least, including with Quinn Buckner, who was also reappointed, even though he's already served 3 terms on the board. Braun appointed him to a 4th, which violates the law, I believe. I don't know if they've actually changed that, but Buckner said, quote, "I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue serving my alma mater, which has given me so much. As chair, I welcome my new colleagues to the board. I'm excited to collaborate as a team to continue propelling IU to new heights." Just pablum. It says nothing. Won't even really admit that there's a controversy going on. I feel icky about the whole thing. Tracy, you're a UM grad. They're doing something similar up at Michigan, kind of, aren't they?
Well, there's some hope in this for you. And yes, I am a very proud Michigan grad. Go Blue. And we were utterly heartbroken when our president back in March, oh my God. So Michigan previously had one of the most comprehensive DEI initiatives anywhere in the nation for any university, public or private. And we were deeply proud of that. Michigan's liberal tradition is long and proud and strong. And I attended in that milieu, and I carried those values with me into everything I do today. And then so when Santa Ono just rolled over and said, "Here you go, Trump, weehaw," and then just cut all of their DEI initiatives without any real reason other than he just wanted to, and he saw what was happening in Columbia, we all were pretty horrified. And then unshocked when then very shortly afterward, he announced that he was departing for Florida, whose boards have been taken over by Ron DeSantis. But poor Santa Anos, and again, in a similar way, Scott, to what's happened at IU. And all 3 schools have the same sort of cultural problems. They have their, liberal bastions in either swing or conservative states. And when he went down to Florida, he thought he had it in the lock, but it turns out that he wasn't quite Trumpy enough for the Board of Regents, who then canceled his appointment, and now he has no job. So there is a price to pay for when universities start playing footsie with different political persuasions to pacify people. I don't know how much impact that's going to have, because this wasn't a leadership, this wasn't your your trust. Yeah, I don't know exactly how it worked out there, but there is, I think there's something to be said for finding some values and sticking with them. I don't know how it's going to play out.
Well, here's what it is, and all the situation here. It's actually, even though I went to Illinois, I find this fascinating. The person to point the finger at as to the removal of those 3 trustees is Pam Whitten, IU president, because Pam Whitten she's been, my sources told me that IU woman, she'd been in fights with the last 3 trustees forever and ever and ever, and they get to the point that she wanted them gone. Spoke to the governor. The bill was introduced. It passed in an amendment form, and that's why you have Sage Steele, Jim Bopp, and Quinn Buckner there, as opposed to the other 3. It's all Pam Whitten, plain and simple.
Pam Whitten is a hired hatchet person, if you ask me. She was brought here, by Republican-appointed board of trustees that hired her in the first place to de-wokify IU, whatever that's supposed to mean. And this is part of the larger attack on higher education. Goes hand in hand with Project 2025, the stuff going on at Harvard, the stuff going on at Columbia. The Big Ten schools are alleged to have joined some sort of NATO-style mutual defense pact to protect them against federal overreach, but we're undermining ourselves.
You see, but it looks like here's the thing, though, and I'll be happy to come back anytime and talk about this in a more involved discussion. Here's the problem with DEI overall. And first of all, whenever my Republican friends do something that has to do only with initials, it never ends well for them. DEI, RFRA, DST, it never ends well. So that's kind of point number 1. But I think the bigger issue is, and the challenge for universities is, how do we have a student population that looks like the communities that we serve? In a nutshell, that's what it is. And I think you can do it without automatically going, race or gender, and just simply go by economic status. Because if you think about it, that same circle of people that you're going to get who come from economically challenged backgrounds are going to be 90% the same people who you would take care of and look after today. Because at the end of the day, my niece, she's like 4th generation master's degree. She does not need special help. I mean, I have a law degree. My brother has degrees. Her parents have degrees. Their grandparents have degrees. They do not need help. Now, our cousins, who are idiots, they need the special help and special assistance.
I don't think it's special help. I don't think it's about
because they come from more economically challenged backgrounds. Abdul,
DEI is not about special help for an individual. It's about having a broad-based number of students. I grew up.
That's how you get it, though.
I grew up in rural Jennings County. I knew no Jewish people. I knew 5 Black families in my county. When I went to college, guess what? There's a broad range of students from all backgrounds. I went to a private school, Tulane University, but they certainly brought people in based on all kinds of things. I benefited from that as much as they did. My first college roommate was Jewish from Des Plaines, Illinois. First Jewish man I ever met. I'm a better man for knowing him, right? That benefited me, not him. That's what DEI is about, is a broad range of experiences and students, not pigeonholing, well, you're going to go here to white school with white boys. That's not what it's about.
Yeah,
I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I do believe, though, you can still get that same type of diversity that you're looking for without necessarily calling it DEI.
Yeah, well, I think it's also, when we're talking about students, it would be more affirmative action than DEI. DEI would apply more for the faculty, which I think is important for different reasons. But yeah, I would also disagree with the sentiment that these kind of protocols are like special help more so than addressing the very real barriers that do exist for these populations. Now, whether or not that could be addressed through class, cool. I mean, if it addressed the barriers, I think that's what matters. And I think DEI does that. So there's something to be said about like not fixing something that isn't broken, but I don't care how we do it as long as we do it. I think that's the
And I think DEI in the context of IU is not really the most important thing to be talking about. I think the fact that, do we really want institutions of higher education are meant to have barriers between them and the political parties in
Yes.
charge for a reason.
Yep.
Do we want someone with whatever whims they have going on and whatever base they want to appease, do we want them to be in charge of the educational experience that our children have? I mean, I don't know about you, but I believe passionately in state higher education. I'm a graduate of one. I had an amazing experience. It changed my life and it prepared me for a future that I am enjoying. And I want that same experience for my kids. And I want, like you said, Ross, I want my children to have the same mind broadening experience of an interaction with other cultures and other people and other viewpoints so that they are prepared to interact on the world stage. I don't want my children prepared for a future that's limited to within the boundaries of Indiana. And I think that if we allow these, if we allow the barriers between our our public education system and the political parties in charge to founder, then we're going to lose those protections.
Thank you, Tracy. That great way to wrap it up. I think that very good points there. Really, our country was made great in the post-war era with massive investment in public higher education that was independent and separate from political influence.
I don't think it's been
That's where we're
separate.
gonna.
I don't think it's just been as obvious as it is now. But politics has always played a role in education. Don't fool
Absolutely.
yourselves, people.
Oh yeah, they certainly have. They certainly have, and they will continue to, because we're talking about people's kids, and that's always going to raise passions. So that's where we're going to have to leave it this week. On behalf of my guests today, Abdul Hakim Shabazz, Ross Thomas, Tracy Martin, and Brandon Clark, it's been a pleasure. My name's Scott Aaron Rogers. This has been Who's Left This Week. We'll see you next Sunday. Until then, love each other, Indiana.